On behalf of the Mercosur Social Institute, I wish to thank you, the ISACs. I want to thank the ISACs for the opportunity to speak about the role and the work carried out by our institute. My name is Marcelo Setaro. I am a graduate in political science and also with experience in the area of health and social policies. And I'm working now at the Social Institute of the Mercosur as head of the Department of Research and Management of Information. The presentation that we have prepared for you today, according to the guidelines provided by the ISACs, basically they consist of a presentation showing you what the Institute is doing, the working agenda, the origin and creation of the entity, as I said, the working agenda, and some of the topics that we believe may be of interest for the people working in such a complex area of international relations in the area of health. The presentation has been organized around 5 blocks. First of all, I will refer to the Mercosur, the basic legislative aspects, decision-making processes for the creation of public policies within Mercosur, and secondly, the creation of structures of organization of the Social Institute of Mercosur, explaining you how it works, and thirdly, a description of the social agenda of Mercosur, which are the documents, the norms, the guidelines of the Institute, and fourthly, to speak about some possible convergence topics between the research agenda of Mercosur, UNASUR, and other development plans and process of regional integration. The conclusion, I will provide information about the value of these technical organizations, some possible points of contact. At the end of the presentation, I will provide you with a bibliography, which you may have access whenever you wish. To begin with, topic 1, some general aspects of Mercosur to take into consideration. We have 4 fundamental aspects. I will give you some information. I'm not going too deep into the information. Mercosur has a political and historical context. As a process of regional integration, is the heir of the processes that were organized until the 60s, ALALC in the 60s and ALARI in the 80s. But also important processes as the transition to democracy in the region, economic globalization, and the evolution of the Argentinian and Brazilian bilateral relationship. We have to bear in mind the evolution of this relationship between these 2 countries. Understand the bilateral evolution is important when we understand the setting up of Mercosur. We can also speak about the experience of the debt in the 80s. That means to say some aspects that generate political cohesion among the countries. Then we have to take into consideration the normative framework. Mercosur is defined by the Asunción Treaty of the year 1991 and the Ouro Preto Protocol of the year 1994. So how is it that the entity is organized institutionally? That gives a shape, that shapes the decision-making process of Mercosur. Also, we have in the decision-making process in Mercosur, we have the group of the common market and the CMC. The hegemony corresponds to the ministries of foreign affairs and economy of the countries of the entity. They control and monopolize the decision-making process. And you may see the evolution of Mercosur since its inception. In a second instance, at the beginning, it dealt with purely commercial aspects, but then it started to have a profile of citizenship, giving citizenship as to the member of the Mercosur. We have mentioned the Asunción Treaty. There is also a variety of important instruments in addition to the Ouro Preto Protocol. We have the Olivos Protocol on resolution of disputes. We have also the Brasilia Protocols also on resolution of disputes. The Ushuaia one on the democratic commitment. And so on. Also commitment with the human rights. The Council of the Common Market, CMC, depending on them, they have a variety of institutions, working meetings with the ministers and with the specialized agencies. The technical subgroups, which are very famous, of industry, commerce, and labor. So there is a technical and political process for diagnosis and proposals. This comes out from the meetings of ministers in UNASUR, and they prepare the proposals to be presented. So this is how decision-making processes take place. Also, we have in the social dimension the areas of political orientation. You see that there is a large variety of meetings. Me specialize in culture, ministers of culture, minister of health, also the specialized meetings on women, also the meetings of ministers and authorities of social development, cooperatives, family agriculture, human rights again, youth, social affairs, sports. If we have a look at this slide on the decision model of Mercosur, we have these two great circles, how they are connected. all these technical agencies, the meetings of ministers, the specialized and the subgroups in health, labor, and so on, social security, they propose diagnosis and also proposal for solutions, establishing public policies that are addressed at the GMC meetings. That is the process of political and technical processes. The decisions are made by the CMC and the GMC. So here we have the institutional presence of the ministries of foreign affairs and also central banks, because they have their own place in the decision-making processes. President meetings also, which are very important, that have a guiding value, and political orientation regarding the main goals of the entity. So the decisions are made by the GMC and CMC. That means to say the Ministries of Foreign Affairs. After this introduction and the decision-making process, let's explain if, as the MERCOSUR is an intergovernmental agreement, the decisions are taken by consensus of the member countries. New institutions come up, the social questions, we may mention two groups of factors when we explain the social question appearance. First of all, with the turn of the century, we had a new proposals in Latin America. Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay, for example, which question the old models. Also, there are new party approaches from the academy also. For example, the pink wave within Latin America is also an important factor. And also the concern of the governments trying to reduce asymmetries. The different levels of development of the countries, especially when we compare the size of the countries, Brazil or Argentina, and smaller economies. Say, how is it that we can organize the development process of all those different countries? So this is one great concern of the countries at that time. And finally, the need to establish a guideline and a technical dimensionality, especially in the social arena, organizing specialized meetings, health, education, labor, social security. This showed the need to build institutions within the MERCOSUR to provide a kind of institutionality, and also in order to build regional citizenship. That is why in the second stage of development of Mercosur, since the year 2000, 2001, there are new proposals on the social area of Mercosur, cultural agenda, etc. Development works within the region and so on. The creation of the Institute of Policies of Human Rights, in addition to the Social Institute of the Mercosur. All these new institutions try to have a heavier load of orientation in the institution. In 2007, through decision CMC number 3, the Social Institute of the Mercosur is created. The operation structure is as follows. They have a council made up of representatives from countries, an executive director, which is designated also by the member countries, and since the year 2017, a technical structure of Mercosur agencies, the Department of Administration and Finance, the Department of Communication, the Department of Promotion and Exchange of Social Policies in the regional area, and the Department of Research and Management of Information. The representative Argentine, Gabriel Soseri, is the director of the Social Institute. And we have other authorities. And from the year, as I said, from the year 2016, they have a technical administrative structure. In the year 2015, there were open calls to integrate the structure, the functional structure of the Institute. I mean to see the Institute had to appoint its members of staff that are professionals, because in the previous years the selection wasn't so strict. That means to say, in 2016 the Institute has a consolidated structure with all the departments that we mentioned before. Now we have a contest to appoint the head of the Social Policies Department. This is the organic structure of the Institute, which is financed by the contributions of the party states, member states. According to each country's economic capacity. Paraguay, as the venue of the Institute headquarters, also contributes with an important amount of money. The Institute also has a project which is in operation. that will cover the work also it does and some other activities. What are the purposes, the goals of the Social Institute? The main purposes of the institutes, according to decision CMC number 47 of 2010, in Article 2, is to contribute to the social dimension as a fundamental area in the development of Mercosur, to provide the supervision of asymmetries, to cooperate technically in the design of social policies and regional policies too, to systematize and update social regional indicators, to compile and exchange good practices in the social area, and to promote horizontal cooperation mechanisms, and also to identify financing sources. And also, it is very important to mention that one of the goals of the Social Institute is to promote space for the exchange of ideas and knowledge. Because the space, the territorial space, has a very rich experience in order to disseminate and to exchange the different social experiences. This is a synthesis, more or less, of the mission of the Institute. Here we have the functions of the Social Institute: to provide technical cooperation in the design and planning of social projects, and others, according to the purpose of the Mercosur, which is to improve the social dimension through the formulation of policies. The social agenda of Mercosur is defined by the following normative instruments: the multilateral agreement on social security of the Mercosur of the year 1999, but also there are a series of normative documents that guide the work of the Institute. In addition to the multilateral agreement on social security, we have the Social and Labor Declaration of the year 1998, This declaration has been updated. It's important that it provides basic standards for the guidelines in the relationships between the workforce, unions, qualifications of laborers. The third relevant normative is the Citizenship Statute of the year 2010, that refers to the circulation of people. This is a very important legislation establishing how the members, the citizens of the Mercosur can go from one place to the other. The circulation of the members of Mercosur, citizens, I mean. how to carry out their migration proceedings, and so on. All these guidelines are defined in these statutes. And the fourth instrument is the Social Action Strategic Plan, PEAS, of the year 2011. It is for the Mercosur Social Institute and for all those who work in the area of communication, is the key element providing cohesion to the work we carry out, providing some directionality in our daily work. This plan for social action has a series of important pointexes. You see that these 10 action plans, they have 26 guidelines and over 100 priority objectives. For example, in the first one axis, we have the eradicate famine, poverty, and fight social inequalities. The second one, to guarantee and ensure human rights, humanitarian assistance, and ethnic, racial, and gender equality. The third one refers to the universalization of public health. The fourth, the universalization of education and the eradication of illiteracy. The fifth one, to provide value and promote cultural diversity. The sixth, to guarantee productive inclusion. The seventh, to ensure access to decent work and to the rights of social security. The eighth, to promote environmental sustainability. The ninth, to ensure social dialogue. And the 10th, the establishment of mechanisms of regional cooperation for the implementation and funding of social policies. All these aspects are included in the social plan, which, as I mentioned, also comprise 26 guidelines and over 100 priority objectives. Also, there are several mechanisms, political within Mercosur. This is important because of the processes within the Mercosur. That means to say we have to highlight the presence of several mechanisms, not only for entrepreneurs, workers, and so on. We also try to advance in regional cooperation mechanisms, not only in South America, but also throughout Latin America, and establishing mechanisms for funding. As That means to say that it's a plan with the guidelines and the priority objective. It's a plan very complete. It's a very complete plan. It is a very relevant document, the plan, I mean, that provides cohesion to the work of the Institute. Now we will have some elements for an ISM agenda. We would say here that there are 4 axes of pairs which we believe are very important for cooperation between ISACs and the Social Institute. The first one is to eradicate famine, poverty, and fight social inequalities. Also, this has to do with distribution policies inequality is seen not only from an economic viewpoint, but also from taking into consideration all the other social factors in order to contribute for the health of the population. Poverty, inequality are elements that determine the situation of the peoples. The second axis lies on human rights, humanitarian assistance, and ethnic, racial, and gender equality. Taking into consideration all these natural aspects, there is a great load of work for public health in this area. In this eggs, the aim is to strengthen humanitarian assistance through the guidelines, ensuring access to public services. Also, the development of national capacities in the area of health, technological development too, also as regards the industries of medicines, which are important for the research agenda of our institute. Also, another area for action is the reduction of mortality. It's a very important work area. That means to say, in addition to social development, and this has to do with the integral development of the citizens. Since the pregnancy. So this is a topic that has an important purpose, in which many very interesting points may appear for working between the ISACs and the ISM. In this case, for example, in the Argentine, work is being carried out about the first childhood, and social development. we believe that these are important areas for social policy. A very interesting cooperation area. In the 10th, we have the mechanisms for regional cooperation for the implementation of social policies, technical cooperation, development of capacities, in a relationship with, between institutions, like our institutions. An important work can be carried out in order to comply with joint initiative that may help to the development of the region. After all this, what is the Social Institute doing about all this? We know that the technical team of the Institute has been carrying out several areas of work. That means to say the lines of international of the Institute. For example, some initiatives are the MERCOSUR Prize for Research in Social Policies. So the best works in the area were considered in a ceremony that was carried out, and we will be publishing the works that received the prizes with the analysis on social policies. This is going to be a permanent initiative. We will establish several areas of interest in this prize that we will make a call next year, and it would be very interesting to work regarding the focus of interest for the call. We also have an observatory of social policies of Mercosur. Seminars for strategic discussion. All this involves all the previous three, the prize, involves initiatives, economic initiatives. We have selected 12 works. This year we will be launching the Social Policies magazine of the Mercosur. And we hope to generate a space for the publication of technical works on social policies in the area. This is an important initiative, as we may see. As regards the Observatory of Social Policies of Mercosur, we are organizing it very quickly. The observatory will serve to carry out a follow-up work in the area of social policies. That have to be compatible with the agenda of sustainable objectives. We are also working with the Ministry of Social Development of Uruguay in this area. Also the UNILA, which is the Federal University for Legislation, generating in order to establish, as I said, a follow-up framework of social policies. Also, we will have seminars of strategic discussion. In 2016, we organized in Asunción, Paraguay, seminar on democracy and public policies and the relationship between politicians and technicians. Trying to see the process and the difficulties that all these technicians and politicians find. In this year in Buenos Aires, we organized another seminar about the ODS and the capacities of countries of the Mercosur. It was a very good event with all the peoples of South America, in addition to the Mercosur, were present in this seminar in Buenos Aires. A fifth line has to do with the research projects, which is a permanent issue. We are implementing two projects at present, one regarding citizenship in border areas, and the other one referring to the life conditions of indigenous peoples in Paraguay and their access to social rights. In all these studies, we are trying to design diagnosis and prepare diagnosis. We are also working on the productive processes in indigenous peoples. Another line of research, we have the national profiles for social protection in Mercosur, which was inaugurated recently. We would like to promote from the Social Institute a series of studies in order to have a scheme of social policies in Mercosur. This will allow us to establish a diagnosis on the weak points and the strong points, and see which are the working points in which we have to go deeper. The Institute has already published the first important study in this area, in the area of national profiles of social protection. We invite you to see this study in www.ISM-MERCOSUR.org. There are several academic bodies working on that. This will help us to characterize social protection in the area. And we also try to combine it with the approaches of CEPAL, for example, involving areas such as education, health, social security, social assistance. This study we have a very important weight, providing opportunities to discuss the future of the region. In the next slide, we have the development plans and the PEAs. We have here again the convergence between the ISACs and the Social Institute. Perhaps he says that it could be difficult to read this slide, and we are now seeing the plans, because the American area has 5 instruments of guidance in the policies of social development. These are reference instruments. The Sustainable Development of the United Nations of the year 2015, which has 17 objectives and 229 indicators. In the second place, we have the Social Charter of the Americas of the OAS, which was prepared between 2012 and 2015, in which we have 7 areas of intervention and 54 lines. We also have the San Salvador Protocol on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights of the OAS. In the fourth place, we have the Priority Social Agenda of UNASUR, devised in 2012, with 5 axes of intervention. And also we have the plan of South American goals of the UNASUR of the year 2016, with 10 dimensions, 24 goals, and 47 indicators. Going back to the previous slide, all these instruments have to do with all the plans for the developments, the PEAS, that we see on the slides, on this slide. Working on eradication of famine, poverty, and fight social inequalities, guarantee the human rights, humanitarian assistance, and ethnic, racial, and gender equality, the universalization of public health, the universalization of education and eradication of illiteracy, and to provide proper value and promote cultural diversity, guaranteeing also the productive inclusion, and ensuring access to decent work and to the rights of social security. All these elements will facilitate the work to be carried out by MERCOSUR and also UNASUR within the social dimension of MERCOSUR and the health policies. Just to conclude, the academic team of the ISAC was asking, what is the value of integration? Political and regional association is a strategy of the national states to face economic and commercial globalization. That means to say it has to do in the area of production, the emergence of new economic powers in the world has to do with all this. Agricultural transformation, the integration is seen as a protection, but also as a platform to develop the possibilities of the country in flows like, for example, trade. In the second instance, we believe that regionalization is a space for the shared development, empowering the strong points of the different territories and making good use of their resources and populations that are part of the region. We have to take into consideration the natural and human resources of the area. and what we can achieve through union and cooperation. In the third instance, we have to make good use of the opportunities that institutions provide. Because there are sufficient technical institutional spaces, knowledge, new approaches in the area of social policies. Everything is done horizontally. It's not an imposition. It's not an order. It's working horizontally, sharing experiences, and, for example, making developments between the countries, Paraguay, for example. Also, the work to be carried out with indigenous populations is very important. Also, the work on the expansion of social rights. Something important is done in Uruguay at present. That means to say all the countries need to share their experiences and knowledge. That has to be shared horizontally, as I said before. This is perhaps the great value that these technical institutions are offering, both the ISACs and the Social Institute. We have to bear in mind all these possibilities. And with this, I will be closing the main aspects of this presentation. You see on the slide the bibliography that is available for those who are distant to understand what is Mercosur, what is the strategic social action plan, the social dimension of the Mercosur, democracy and public policies, the role of research in the cycle of social policies. We are open to respond to any question you may have. Thank you very much for your attention.